Welcome to the Testosterone Fix. Learn how to boost your testosterone and reclaim your strong, energetic body. So, we're going to cover a lot of topics in this presentation today, and it's because it needs to be done. There's so many things that are catered to so many populations, but there's very few information that's catered to men when it comes to understanding how to optimize your testosterone, and it's a damn shame. So, today we're going to cover a lot of topics, and we give you a lot of resources. Get out a pen and a piece of paper, put away all the distractions, and take notes, because this will be a transformative experience if you pay attention. So let's begin. Who is this for? If you're someone that feels like you've lost your edge, you're suffering from low libido, you're not waking up, standing full at attention, you're struggling to put on muscle, you're noticing a rapidly expanding waistline, you're lacking motivation, or you're just feeling like you're not reaching your full potential, then this video is for you. What we're going to cover today is how to fix your testosterone, how to interpret your testosterone labs, natural ways to boost your testosterone, and we're also going to go over some medical methods to boost your testosterone as well. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Pay attention. Some of y'all are going to be like, hey, I'm just going to fast forward to the end and figure out what are the treatment options. Do not do that. Watch everything, or you risk potentially damaging your body, making yourself infertile, having tons of side effects. Watch everything that I have today. It's built here for a reason. Everything builds into the next thing. All right. At the end, I also have a special offer for you that's going to help you jumpstart your testosterone journey if it's something that you need work on. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. Now, let's begin. Why should you care? This is why you should care. Because testosterone levels have shown a significant decline over the past 3 decades. And some estimates are seeing drops anywhere between 30 to 50% on average. And this decline is kind of alarming because it's likely to be influenced by various factors that we're actually going to cover today. When we're looking at this drop, between 1987 and 2004, the average testosterone levels among men aged 45 to 80 dropped approximately 1% per year. And then we look at another study. Between 1999 and 2016, they observed a more rapid decline of almost 2% per year in men around the age of 27. So these findings indicate that the decline in testosterone levels is accelerating over time, and it's affecting younger men to a greater extent, which is kind of shocking. That's not good. I'm 33. So that means my cohort is actually feeling the drops of testosterone more than any. So when your mother says you're half the man your father was, she's kind of right. But, don't internalize that. Just get some therapy. She didn't mean it. All right. All right. So what is the cause of these dropping testosterone levels? Where is it going on? Well, the first thing is, just got to be open and honest about it, is the rising obesity levels. As you can see, ever since about the 1970s, obesity has skyrocketed. And as we're going to highlight later in this presentation, there are some physiological things that are going into play because of this. Here's the first thing. So when you have excess visceral adipose tissue, aka belly fat, what ends up happening is there is an enzyme called aromatase. And this aromatase enzyme is responsible for turning our testosterone into a form of estrogen called estradiol, okay? And the greater the amount of visceral adipose tissue from things like obesity, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, all this stuff, right? The more likely this enzyme is expressed. And here's what makes it even worse. When you have excess estrogen, it is used to negatively tell the brain and the hypothalamus to reduce the production of testosterone, because we don't produce estradiol because we don't have ovaries, okay? So the only way that we are able to gauge whether or not we need more estradiol is based on how high that level is. So the more estrogen we have in our system, the less we're going to produce of testosterone. You're going to see this becomes a reoccurring theme in a lot of reasons why we as men are struggling with low testosterone. So another thing, phytoestrogens and xenoestrogens. So phytoestrogens come from plants, and synthetic xenoestrogens come from plastic manufacturing. So we've all heard of, like, you should probably stay away from plastics. You got to worry about where your foods come from, all these things. And this is why. So these types of estrogens can mimic estrogen in the body because, as you can see, they bind to the receptors similarly to estrogen, right? And this can lead to the suppression of testosterone production by the brain's hypothalamus, negatively impacting testosterone levels, right? So it's the same thing that's happening over here. If you have high amounts of estrogen, you're going to reduce the production of testosterone, all right? So if you have high amounts of fake estrogen, you're going to still do the same thing. So you have to make sure you keep your estrogen levels in check. And that's what we're going to talk about in this presentation. So xenoestrogens, they're in a lot of different products. They're in plastics. They're in, especially when they're exposed to heat, they're in things like nail polish removers. They're in detergents and fabric softeners. They're in a lot of our household products. So, I want you after this video to just really take an inventory on some of the things that are in your environment and try to make sure that you're doing your best to try to avoid some of these things. And, we're talking about pesticides, herbicides, and this is why a lot of people are like, hey, you need to eat organic. And, there are things, all organic does not necessarily mean it doesn't have pesticides and herbicides, but you need to do your best to try to understand where your food is coming from, what's in your detergents, what's in the clothing products you have. Try to stay away from consuming plastics. All these things play a huge role in your body, and that's something that a lot of people take for granted. And, just making this presentation highlighted it and brought it to the front of my mind that, hey, I need to be paying attention to some of this stuff a little bit more as well. So we talked about xenoestrogens. Now let's talk about phytoestrogens. So phytoestrogens are not nearly as strongly bound to the estrogen receptor. So it's not as something that you should be super, scared of because they're so much weaker. They may not be as unsafe as the other things which are considered endocrine disruptors, but they should be considered generally undesirable if you're a younger man or a younger woman, especially those who have issues with estrogen dominance. So if you're someone that already has history of gynecomastia, you already have some man boobs, you already have some excess belly fat, you don't want to be, overdoing it on foods that are going to potentially make it worse. There's some people that, they're perfectly fine and they have a little bit of soy from like some tofu or some soy milk, and then they end up with like some swollen puffy nipples. You're estrogen sensitive and you need to chill out, all right? So these things happen to certain people. So you have to know who you are, know what's going on in your body, and try to adjust accordingly. So now what we're going to talk about is how to interpret your labs, which is one of the most important part of this, because a lot of guys don't even have testosterone labs. If in a perfect world, what I would recommend at the age of 18 to 21, you should get at least your first baseline set of labs done when it comes to your testosterone. And then every couple years, you should be checking it over and over again because you'll be able to see trends. You'll see based on your health status, what was my testosterone? Now, what is it now? Okay. A lot of us don't have that information and we don't even find out till we're like 35 or 40. It's not great. So we're going to talk about knowing your status and how to interpret your labs. So the first thing I want to do is go over case study. These are two of my clients that had testosterone levels that we were able to pretty significantly increase. Both of them went up by about 300 to 400. So this can be done. This can be done with supplementation. It can be done with nutrition. It can also be done with medication. But in these cases, the medication was not involved. So when you typically see your testosterone labs, what you're going to see is a bunch of different things. You're going to see, you should be able to see testosterone, free testosterone. You're going to see FSH and LH. And you should also be able to see your sex hormone binding globulin. And at the bottom, you might not be able to see on the screen, you should also see estradiol. Okay. Oh, it's actually right here. All right. So all of these things, we're going to kind of dive in deep to what they mean because a lot of times people don't understand them. And as you can see, in this individual that has previous results and current results, and you can see there's a jump between almost 300 here, and you went from 9.8 to 15.3 in the free. So as you can see, over time, you can produce and improve your testosterone quite significantly. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is total testosterone. This is what everybody knows. If they know anything about their testosterone, everyone knows their total testosterone. And I'm going to tell you why that information doesn't tell the full story. So your total testosterone refers to the overall amount of testosterone in your bloodstream. And yes, it's an important marker for assessing your testosterone levels in men, but it doesn't say everything. The normal total testosterone ranges, which are kind of ridiculous, are in a huge range between 300 to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter. And if this level is low, you're going to experience symptoms like fatigue, decreased libido, muscle weakness. You can even be depressed, low energy, low motivation. And now if these numbers are super high, you can also have adverse effects as well, such as, tons of acne. You can have really high levels of hemoglobin, which makes thickening of your blood. If you're someone that does that and you already have like cardiac issues, it can lead to like a high risk of like a heart attack or stroke. So that's why you want to be within a good range. You want to also make sure you're metabolically healthy. So when you look at this on a lab result, you'll see your total testosterone is just going to be the bigger number, right? So it's going to be the bigger number. They're going to tell you what the reference range is depending on where you are. Sometimes it's the nanograms per deciliter, sometimes it's not. So then what you'll do is you just want to see what that number is. But now you'll see there's also a free testosterone, right? And this one is actually the number I care about a little bit more because it tells us more information. So the free testosterone represents the portion of testosterone that is not bound to SHBG or sex hormone binding globulin or other proteins. It is the biologically active form of testosterone that's available for use by the body's tissue. So that's why it matters, right? We want the free, unbound testosterone because that is what's going to dictate what we're able to use to build muscle, to feel the energy, to do all these other things. And this range is very narrow. It's between 9 and 30 nanograms per deciliter. And if you have low free testosterone, it's going to contribute to the same amount of things. So what you'll see here is this range is between 8.7, 25.1, so a little different than that one. But you'll see this individual went from 9.8 to 15.3. All right, so if you're going to get these labs done, at the very least, get both of these. Because if you're just getting your total testosterone, it doesn't tell me what's happening with your free. Because you can have a relatively high total, but then you have a low free because a lot of your total is bound to SHBG, which is what we're going to talk about now. So sex hormone binding globulin is exactly what it is. It's short. It binds to sex hormones and it's thought to render them inactive. And when these levels drop during puberty, it's actually thought to lead to an increase in the availability of androgens that are free to act on your androgen receptors. And that's what leads to turning a boy into a man. So obviously, this has huge implications when you're going through puberty, and that's why you ended up with chest hair and a mustache. But in a grown man, sometimes you might want to modulate this so that way you can optimize your testosterone levels as well. So you can see in this patient, they actually had really low SHBG. We're not 100% sure why, but then their SHBG went into like the middle of the range. But what I've seen, which sometimes is concerning, is someone, they'll feel like they have low amounts of testosterone because they'll have like, their total T is really high, right? But then they'll come here and they have like maybe a SHBG of like 60. So that means a lot of their testosterone is being bound up. So then I run another test and I see that if their total is really high, the SHB is really high. So they're not even getting the benefit of having high T. They still feel like they have low T because we see their SHBG is high. So then there's certain things we can do to modulate that and try to bring that into a more reasonable range. So at any given moment, roughly 98% of your total testosterone can be bound by one of these two proteins, either albumin or SHBG, which means that only 2% of your testosterone is typically considered free and able to act on androgen receptors in the body. All right. And it's estimated that I mentioned earlier that roughly 54% of your total testosterone is bound to albumin, where 44% is estimated to be bound to SHBG. And that's why you can't just get your total T and then say, oh, my total T is 900. I don't care, right? What is your free T? What is your SHBG? And what are the other markers? All right, now we're going to talk about estradiol, right? So we mentioned earlier that if you have high levels of estrogens, it can suppress your production of testosterone. So it would be a good idea for you to know what this number is. And most guys don't ever get this. So estradiol is a form of estrogen. It's typically found in small amounts in men. And testosterone can convert into estradiol through a process called aromatization. And like I mentioned, a lot of this aromatization happens in our adipose tissue, aka the fat cells. So adequate estradiol levels are important for various physiological functions, including bone health, cognition, and sexual function. I do not like suppressing estrogen or estradiol because it's neuroprotective. It protects your brain. So like a lot of guys, they get started on these TRT protocols, they get put on an anastrozole, which is essentially an estrogen blocker, and then it suppresses their estrogen. But you're taking away the neuroprotection of the brain. right? But at the same time, a lot of people get started on testosterone. They're not healthy. They have tons of visceral fat, and now a lot of that testosterone is turning into estrogen. And now they have tons of gynecomastia, and they're full of water and they're bloated, right? So both of these scenarios are not great, and that's why it's important to work with someone that understands all of these things. So if you're trying to wing it by yourself at home, or you're trying to just have somebody that doesn't even check your health, but they'll prescribe this stuff for you, and you're still seeing side effects, you need to think about, okay, what am I actually doing to myself? Why don't I know what my estradiol numbers are? Why don't I know what my SHBG numbers are? Because you should know all of these things. It's not just, you're playing with your body, you're playing with your life. High estradiol levels can lead to symptoms like gynecomastia and water retention, like I mentioned. And this stuff is serious because the excess water retention can lead to you potentially having hypertension, and now you need another medication to manage that. Or you could do it all the right way. You don't have to worry about these problems. Now, another thing that we want to consider before we even start going down the path of hormone replacement and all this other stuff is we need to see FSH and LH. So FSH and LH are pituitary hormones, and they play a huge role in your testosterone production because your FSH is going to stimulate the production of your sperm and your testicles, while your LH stimulates the production of the testosterone. So measuring the FSH and LH can help identify any potential issues within your hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis. It's really hard to say, but that essentially is your brain to gonad axis, right? Which is responsible for regulating your testosterone production. So abnormal levels are going to indicate if you have any problems with your testes or your pituitary gland. So this is something that is very important to understand before trying to monitor or change your testosterone protocol. So LH, right? This is going to stimulate the production of testosterone in the testes. So when we look at these, we can see this individual has relatively high LH. It's not really super high, so it's pretty much within range. It's 8.6 to 8.9. It's nothing. All right, so they have the 8.9 on both scenarios, and in here you can see that their FSH is like smack dab in the middle, right? So we said LH is going to be what's responsible for stimulating their testicles to produce more testosterone, and FSH is going to be responsible for stimulating the testicles to produce sperm in the testes. Now, if you start yourself on inject any type of exogenous hormone replacement therapy, so injectable testosterone, pellets, creams, anything, what is immediately going to happen is these numbers are going to tank, right? Your LH is going to be in the toilet because you don't need, your body's like, oh, I already have testosterone, I don't need to do this, right? So you're going to tank your LH, and you're also going to tank your FSH. And if you do it for long periods of time, and you're not finding a way to protect this from tanking, you could potentially put yourself in a position where you're infertile for the rest of your life. And that's what happens with a lot of people that are bodybuilding since they're like 20 years old, and then they've never, cycled off. They've ended up making it so that way their testicles have become so small and almost have like sclerosis occurring, and almost have a scar tissue occurring, that it prevents them from ever having children for the rest of their lives. Okay. Now, can you be on hormone replacement and still be able to maintain these levels within range? Yes, but you have to understand how to do that. We're going to talk about that later today. Right. But that is something to consider. And that's why, if you're just getting drugs from the underground or your cousin's bathtub or basement or whatever, and you haven't been getting labs because you just don't want to know this information, you're potentially putting your ability to have future offspring at risk. And that's also something you need to be able to consider. If you're a man that wants to have children, you got to understand, okay, one of the things you have to do when you're on this testosterone protocol is make sure you preserve your fertility. And there's ways around that. So we'll talk about that shortly. So now we're going to talk about some natural ways to improve your testosterone. While there are medical interventions such as, TRT, there are some natural strategies to enhance testosterone levels, and incorporating these lifestyle changes can have a huge impact in balancing your overall well-being. So that's what we're going to start with, because it's important for you to start off mastering the basics before you add some more complicated stuff on in the back end. All right. So that way you get the best bang for your buck. The first thing is exercise. Here's me and my buddy Ron. We're both pretty much working the same realm of sports medicine and regenerative medicine. And this is us after a CrossFit workout that we killed. And we both are religious when it comes to exercising. Engaging in regular physical activity especially resistance training, has been shown to boost testosterone levels. Your strength training exercises, such as weightlifting or bodyweight exercises, bodybuilding exercises, is just going to help you promote the production of their testosterone and also promote muscle growth. So what you want to do is you want to aim for at least 150 minutes of exercise per week. So that can be broken down to 3 days of like 50-minute splits. And then you want to make sure you're also doing something a little bit more intense, maybe 75 minutes of some vigorous exercise where you're doing like high intensity interval training, sprints. You have to have these healthy habits if you really want to put yourself in the best position to optimize for your testosterone, because this is transient. So once you work out, your testosterone will jump up and it'll stay high for a little bit. It's going to do its thing. It's going to help you rebuild your muscles. And then once you chill out, it's going to come back down. But imagine if you never get that spike. Your muscles are just shriveling away, especially after the age of 30. You're losing anywhere between 1% to 2% of muscle mass per year. We aren't. You are. If you're just watching this video and all you do is watch stuff, but you don't actually do stuff, you're just losing muscle mass. Congratulations. All right. Now, the second thing is your diet. And I've seen some of y'all's diet. It's trash. All right. You need to clean up your diet. You want to have a diet that's high in protein. I was going through a lot of research to make this, and I saw that, you know, if you don't have a diet that's optimized for protein, your body's going to think you're starving to death. It thinks you're dying, and then it's going to start to eat away at your muscle tissue, and it's going to lower your testosterone. Okay? So you want to optimize for protein, aiming for anywhere between 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. It's a good region. You want to get some good healthy fats in you. So I get most of my healthy fats from some fatty meats like steak. I also get it from salmon and avocados and olives. Okay? So you want to have those in your diet as well. And then you want to look into having some good sources of fruits. So for me, I have about 3 or 4 fruits that I love. I love blueberries, strawberries. I have a banana every once in a while, and I have a good steady dose of that in my diet. And then vegetables, you want to get some good vegetables in your diet. If you can't get them in your diet, you can supplement them. For me, I use AG2 or AG3. I think it's AG. I don't know. I use Athletic Greens. All right. So that's how I get a lot of my vegetable stuff that I just don't eat. All right. And then you want to potentially add in some whole grains, because all these things can support, optimal hormone balance and testosterone production. Now, one of the biggest things about all of this is you have to maintain a healthy body composition. If you're having excess body fat, especially around the waist, it's going to contribute to lower testosterone levels. You see like the amount of drop that he went from this to this. This is 60 pounds, right? But look at where most of the weight was. Imagine the stress that is being put on this person's body, and that has been lifted off of it now. Way stronger, way more energetic. Same thing with here. Just look at the bloat that's occurring right here. Look at the pressure on his organs. Takes it away. Same thing here. Takes it away. I'm sorry, man. I'm not body shaming none of y'all. But men do not store fat in safe areas. We store it around our gut, and it lowers our testosterone. It spikes up our estrogen. And then it just makes us die quicker because we're putting ourselves at a higher risk of strokes and heart attacks. So adopt a healthy lifestyle. Here's your sign. Now, I know a lot of y'all watching this video love yourself some alcohol, but if it's excessive alcohol consumption can disrupt your hormone balance, and it can negatively impact your testosterone levels. So if you're going to do this, do it in moderation. What does moderation mean? Well, listen to Andrew Huberman's podcast. You'll figure out what moderation really means. But anything more than 1 to 2 days a week of having more than 2 drinks is probably too much, right? So you got to chill out on that. And I want to go back to this, because another thing, I said maintain a healthy body composition. These guys all got lean, but none of them are bodybuilder lean, right? If your body fat gets too low, like I mentioned earlier, it's like your body thinks you're dying. So if your protein levels are too low, your calories are too low, you're also going to drop your testosterone. So these guys are all within a healthy range. No one's super shredded, right? So if you see somebody like has a Christmas tree on his back because he's that lean, that shredded, that's not healthy. So I compete in bodybuilding too, so I know what it's like to do that. But when I'm about to hop on stage, that's the weakest I've ever been. The strongest I'm at is like maybe 4 weeks before the competition. Now let's talk about vitamin D. So Vitamin D deficiency it's an epidemic, really, but it has been associated with lower testosterone levels. So it's very important to try to spend some time outdoors if you're in a place where you can do that, or consider, incorporating vitamin D rich foods into your diet, or discussing supplementation. So a lot of the supplements out there for vitamin D kind of suck. So you want to make sure you're getting one that's easily absorbed, and you want to make sure you're also taking vitamin D with a fatty meal, or it should be already in an oil, which is a big mistake. A lot of people don't know, right? But it's a fat soluble vitamin, so if you're not consuming fats, you're not going to absorb it. And if you're someone that has, a gallbladder that doesn't work, you're not going to have the enzymes to absorb it either. So you have to understand all these different things. So working with a healthcare provider or somebody that understands it, like myself, it was important so that way you can optimize any supplementation. Most supplements are trash, but there are some good ones, but you have to know how to decipher between them. And sleep, sleep is something that's so neglected. We're all like, we'll sleep when we die, and then you're just going to die faster. No, you want to get good quality sleep because it's important for regulating your hormone production. And also, you'll notice that your testosterone is typically highest right in the morning, right? So if you're going to get your testosterone checked, do not get it checked after work. Get it checked first thing in the morning, consistently. That's how you want to track it. You want to get it checked at the same time whenever, or within the same range of time, so that way you can compare them over time. All right. So maintain a good, consistent sleep schedule, and then optimize your sleep environment to promote better sleep. That might mean getting blackout curtains, might mean making sure your room's less than 70 degrees. That might even mean having some good sex. Let's be honest. Sex makes it easier for you to go to sleep. So if you can do that, do that. But, staring into screens late at night, watching porn, all those things are probably not ideal for your sleep, just because of the blue light in front of your eyes. And then stress management. If you're chronically stressed, you're going to elevate your level of the cortisol hormone. And cortisol is a catabolic hormone, which tells your body, hey, we're stressed out. We're going to use all the resources possible to get out of this situation. And if we have to burn through your muscle mass and destroy your testosterone along the way, so be it, right? So if you're chronically stressed because you're starting your day, behind the curve with an alarm clock, and you're just rushing the whole day, and you're always feeling behind, and you're chronically stressed, and your wife is annoying you, and you're just not able to balance all these things, you're just not in a good environment. So, take a step back, prioritize yourself a little bit, reconnect with the people that you care about, try to rebuild those relationships, prioritize self-care. Life is hard, but don't make it any harder than it has to be. So, in summary, all those things matter, right? We're going to go on to, talk about all the stuff that you want to know now, but like all these little basic things matter. Like all those, the before and afters of the jumps of 200-300, all those were lifestyle related, right? You don't necessarily always have to get supplementation, but some people do need supplementation, and it will make you feel better. So if you do it at the right time and do it in the right way. So we'll talk about that right now. So when you're considering treatments for low testosterone, it's important to have the full picture, right? You can't just get your total testosterone and then be like, all right, come on, doc, I'm ready. You got to get everything. All right. So once you get everything, the first drug, honestly, my favorite drug for people under the age of 40 when it comes to testosterone, it would be something like enclomiphene. So enclomiphene is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, which, what it does is it stimulates production of testosterone in testes by blocking the estrogen receptors in the hypothalamus. And this leads to increased release of luteinizing hormone, which we talked about earlier was responsible for raising your testosterone. So let's slow down because it's a lot of words. But earlier, I told you that if your estrogen is too high, your brain will sense that, and it will be like, oh, estrogen is high. The only way I get estrogen is because of testosterone being aromatized into estrogen. So I guess my testosterone is fine, or I should stop producing it, right? Because I don't want to have super high levels of estrogen. That is how that whole system works. So now we take a drug that's going to block the receptors for that estrogen in the hypothalamus. So now your brain's not seeing super high levels of estrogen. In fact, it might be like, hey, there's not really much of this stuff anywhere. What the heck? I need to produce more testosterone to give me some more estrogen. Now, estrogen receptors all over the body are not really targeted as much as the hypothalamus with this specific drug. And the good thing about this drug is it has a very short half-life. So a half-life of like half a day, right? So it's something that you can take daily, and then you still have moments where your brain doesn't feel like you're super, suppressed with this drug, right? So it's a good drug. It has very minimal side effects compared to its the drug it used to be mixed with, another one called Clomid, which a lot of people use as a fertility drug. So Clomid had enclomiphene in it, which does exactly what I just told you. And then it had another compound called zuclomiphene. But the problem with zuclomiphene was more so of like an estrogen agonist. So it acted like estrogen, and the half-life was like 2 weeks, right? So you would be on like almost two drugs simultaneously, one doing what you wanted to do, the other one turning you into an emotional, miserable mess, right? So this drug doesn't have that side effect because it's kind of the good part of the drug that it was designed for. So this is one drug to consider, and it preserves your fertility because it's pretty much a fertility treatment. So if it would be one of the first line drugs for people to try, in my opinion, and it's becoming more popular these days for increasing testosterone, especially in younger men that want to have children and aren't ready or aren't thinking about going to full-blown exogenous testosterone. Now, another thing that does something similar is HCG. So this is a hormone that many of us have heard. It's found in the urine of pregnant women. And what this does is it mimics the actions of LH in the body. And remember, I told you LH stimulates the Leydig cells in the testes to produce testosterone. So HCG can be used in men with secondary hypogonadism to stimulate natural testosterone production. So what this is either it could be a daily injection, it could be a couple of times a week injection. And what it will do, it'll be injected into some people do it differently, but typically it was injected into the fat cells in the abdomen, and then it would help someone increase their natural production. It's kind of naturally stimulate them. Everyone wants to maintain their natty status now, but like this is not a natural way of producing testosterone, and neither is enclomiphene. All these are medical methods of increasing your body's ability to produce testosterone. And then we obviously have testosterone replacement therapy, and there's a lot of different forms of testosterone replacement therapy involved, that exists. So we have the injections. Everybody kind of knows about that. We need to clear this up. Testosterone injections, if you go to most people, they're going to give them to you an intramuscular injection every 1 to 2 weeks. But look what I wrote here. It's more ideal to do twice a week to create more stable levels with less side effects and less of a feeling of a crash. If you inject yourself once a week, you're going to have a really high peak, and then you're going to feel like crap right before your next injection. High peak, feel like crap. Or you can do a little bit of a dose, come back down a little bit, and as you can see, you'll create a more stable thing. So for any client or patient that I have that's on this types of therapy, I always recommend either a 2 to 3 times per week injection. And because you're doing smaller injections, you can do it with an insulin syringe instead of stabbing yourself with a Harpoon 25 gauge. You can just use a 31 gauge insulin syringe. All right. So that's something you can do there. And then they have topical gels and creams. I'm not too familiar with people that do this. The problem with using topical gel or cream is that if you have a loved one that is a female and they touch you relatively around the time that you have this on them, this can be transferred to them. All right. So unless you want your little girl to have a mustache, I wouldn't really recommend this. And then they have transdermal patches. These are things that are really kind of hard to find. It's very rarely used, to be honest. And then they have buccal tablets, which they have buccal tablets and troches, which are things that like dissolve underneath your gums and your oral mucosa in a couple of minutes. This is something that's kind of new. I don't know too many people on them, but they're available. The compounding pharmacy I use, they have them available. I haven't had any patients on that, but it's an option. And then subcutaneous pellets. I've seen these pellets, especially for women. I've seen these pellets as well. So what these are pellets that are embedded into your glute. So they'll kind of go inside your glute, you anesthetize it, and then they're going to cut a hole in there, and then they're going to drop a couple pellets. And then this typically lasts for 3 to 4 months, and it slowly releases testosterone into your system. So if you're someone that just doesn't want to deal with the hassle of like a weekly or a bi-weekly injection, and you want it to be in your system, this is an option. You just have to understand the potential drawbacks. So sometimes if the pellets release a little too quickly, you can have like super high levels of testosterone that look like 3,000. And then, by the time you're supposed to get your pellets replaced, you're like feeling like crap and you're lethargic for like a month. So that is the only thing. It's a little bit harder to titrate because, you're embedding something in your body. But if you're doing this appropriately and you're doing it well and you have someone that knows what they're doing, a lot of times people have very successful results with that. So the choice of the TRT form that you're going to use is really going to depend on factors such as your personal preference, the convenience, the individual response to different treatments. But this is something that should really be carefully monitored by a healthcare professional so that way you're using the optimal dosage, you're getting good blood tests, and with all the stuff that I mentioned today, and you're managing any potential side effects. Because one thing that will occur for a lot of people whenever they start testosterone is that you're going to produce more oil in your sebaceous glands, right? So a lot of guys end up with acne on their back and everything. And there's ways to mitigate that, right? There's different supplements you can take. There's different lotions you can use. There's different things you can use to clean your face. So there's ways to mitigate that. Or you could just change your dosage to where you're not giving yourself a bolus of testosterone. So that way, you're not creating such oily skin all the time. So that's something to consider. And then there are other side effects that we're going to talk about as well. So let's talk about it. So I talked about acne. If you increase your levels, you can get a lot of sebum production. You're going to get this acne, and it sucks. All right. So I've seen people with this. It's bad. This is rough. So you really want to work with somebody that can help you monitor and manage this. This is not common if you're doing it the right way. This is a sign of abuse. Like if you're getting this is a sign of abuse. You can have potential hair loss. Now, if you're going to get bald, this will just accelerate the speed of it. If you're someone that doesn't really have the potential to be bald, it doesn't really affect your hair, right? So just have to know about that. And then if you're going to do that, there are hair protocols you should be put on. So that way, it preserves your hair. So if you're someone that really cares about your hair, but you're like, hey, my testosterone's low and I want to enhance it and I want to do all this other stuff, you should work with someone that understands how to protect your hair, to put you on a hair protocol, as well as how to optimize, your testosterone. And then there's prostate issues. Sometimes they can lead to enlargement of the prostate, making it difficult for you to urinate. So one thing that we do check whenever people are on testosterone is we just check their PSA. And then you can also experience mood changes. So there's this huge stigma that person has roid rage, when someone's on, in traffic and they're angry. All right. That stigma for roid rage comes from a lot of stuff. But in terms of real roid rage, if you actually understand all the different steroids that exist, there's a compound called trenbolone. It is something that was built for animals. It's really built for cattle. And it's abused by bodybuilders and some people in the fitness industry. That will give you roid rage. That's the drug that gives you roid rage. Most other compounds, especially basic testosterone that you're going to get from a clinic, should be getting from a clinic and not your friend's underground website. So most of testosterone, what it will do is going to lead to positive mood changes. Now, if you're someone that has, bipolarism or manic episodes, can it lead to an exacerbation of that? 100%. But in general, what testosterone will do is what a lot of people are trying to do with antidepressants, right? It's going to give you the motivation. It's going to, not 100%, but it's more likely to give you the motivation that you're trying to get from an antidepressant. It's more likely to increase your drive to do certain things. It's more likely to make you motivated to work out. It's more likely to help you nutrient partition things a little bit better and store energy in your muscles instead of your abdomen, right? So a lot of the things that it has been touted as being negative about it's kind of overhyped. Most people end up feeling better, happier, more motivated, and being more productive members of society. So we got to reduce the stigma and just look at it for what's actually happening in real life. And any person that's on this can attest to exactly what I've said. And I've treated lots of patients. I've helped monitor a lot of people on this stuff. So we just got to get rid of the stigma, because if your hormones are not in balance You're going to feel like crap. And having low testosterone is equally as bad as having high testosterone. And most men right now have low and have lots of estrogen, and their hormones are out of whack. And that's the reason why I made this presentation. Now, another thing to consider is high levels of testosterone can stimulate an increase in red blood cell production. So I like to measure your red blood cells, your hematocrit, and your hemoglobin. This is another stigma, is that a lot of people are like, hey, if you take testosterone, you're going to get a heart attack. That is potentially an option that can occur. Here's why. If you're not metabolically healthy, right? You're someone that's already on your road to a heart attack because you're obese, you have high triglycerides, your arteries are already pre-clogged, right? And now I give you a compound that's going to make you produce more red blood cells at a faster rate. The red blood cells being produced at a faster rate might be a good thing. It might help you heal faster. It might help you have more oxygen carrying capacity. But it's going to make your blood thicker, right? And if your blood's thicker, there's a couple things you can do. You can start to give blood, right? So one thing that they do if they see a patient has a propensity for doing this, because it doesn't happen to everybody. It's not even 50%. Like a lot of people, nothing happens. But if you're someone that is actually your hemoglobin's going up, you just give blood and you're good to go. But if you're not monitoring that, and now your hemoglobin gets up to like 17, 18, 20, your hematocrit's through the roof, you're putting yourself at having really thick blood, putting yourself at risk of having really thick blood and potentially having a clot and not ending well. You can't just be putting yourself on this stuff and not getting blood work. And that's something that frustrates me so much. All these people that I've gotten so many people off of using like these underground things into like getting their blood work and lowering their doses, because we've stigmatized the stuff so much that you have all these men just experimenting, and these experiments are what's costing them, their lives, when this can be done appropriately and done safely. So, hopefully this presentation was a one step in the direction of that happening. And another thing is, like I mentioned earlier, infertility. If you're a young man, you want to have kids, you're in your 20s, and you have started down this road, and you're not doing anything to protect your gonads, you're rolling the dice on your future and the future of your future. So that's something to consider. And can you take testosterone and, be able to manage, your fertility? You can. You need to get getting your sperm checked is a good thing to do. Having something like an HCG or an encomofene on cycle, something that some people do. So there's different strategies that people do to preserve their testicular function. All right. But you don't want to suppress yourself for 10 years and roll the dice, because most people will be able to be okay and come back, to be honest. Statistically, most people will be able to come back, but some people won't. Right. So, if you have to choose, right, I'd rather not take the risk and just make sure that if you're on these types of things, you're able to keep your testicles functioning. All right. And then we talked about cardiovascular risk. A lot of this is just going to become like, if you're cardiovascularly unhealthy, you're not checking your blood, you're putting yourself at risk. And that concludes the presentation. Bye. I'm just kidding. All right, so hopefully you got a lot of good information from that presentation. My goal when I created that was just to give men a resource to understand the male hormone testosterone, because this seems like a topic that's very, very taboo for some reason. It's constantly brushed under the rug, and there's a lot of men confused and suffering and wondering why their bodies are changing, and they have a low libido, the low energy, low motivation, low testosterone. So hopefully this gives you at least some information, some starting point to help you fix your testosterone. Now, I get that this is a lot of information, but the crazy thing is this is just scratching the surface. There's so much more that we can really dive into when it comes to this stuff. And if you're someone that's a little overwhelmed and you're like, hey, doc, it would be nice to just talk to someone to come up with a strategy for my individual needs, well, we offer that as well. Down below this video, there is a link to schedule a consultation. And for the first 5 people, we're actually giving away a free consultation. So during this free consultation, we will talk about your own individual goals. We're going to talk about your own individual testosterone profile, and then we're going to come up with a blueprint to get you from where you are to where you want to be. So you'll have a roadmap to take you to the destination that you're looking for. Because I know there's a lot of people confused trying to figure out how to improve their testosterone. So we're going to help you out with that. For the first 5 people, if you're interested,
All you have to do is schedule a consultation. Anyone after that, there's going to be a small deposit. The reason being is that this video was in such high demand. Over 400 men have asked me for this video just at the time of you watching this. And obviously, spots are limited on the calendar. So we just want to make sure that we prioritize people that are really serious. All right. So hopefully you got a lot of good benefit from this. If you feel like there is someone else that's around you that could also benefit from this, just make sure you share this information with them because they need to know as well. All right, let's help everyone improve our testosterone, everyone improve our bodies, improve our health, improve our lives, and also improve our relationships. That's what this is all about, coming together to become better people. All right. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. Clearly, you're a nerd. No, you're someone that's proactive and you care about your health. And that is a beautiful, amazing thing. So continue to dominate and go out there and fix your testosterone.